Hello there, folks. Welcome to another Irrational Passions Review Discussion. This is the second one we're doing here. I'm joined by the wonderful Quin Hoffman, the young, the vibrant, the San Diegoan Quin Hoffman.
Well, howdy, George. I didn't know I was young and vibrant.
Yeah, I would describe you as that. You're certainly out here.
Is that just because I live in San Diego?
I mean, I don't know anything about San Diego apart from Rey Mysterio living there. That's all I know about that.
Okay, but the best bit about Rey Mysterio is
Is it 619 the area code?
Yeah, because that is straight up just an area code.
Yep.
That
Again,
not a lot of people know about.
You really like San Diego. But we're not here to talk about Rey Mysterio. We're here to talk about Falcon Age, and this will be our formal review discussion to get your thoughts out there on the full retail release, which we have played in preview form, and you probably, listener, have read words and or an interview with developer Eka of the game before the full release. But we are now here. Quinn, I assume you finished the entire 6-hour game? Or 9-hour game? Something like that?
Okay, so when Eka told me during my demo at PAX that the game was 6 hours, I was like, rad. Then when I beat the game in like 2.5 hours, I was like, oh.
No, maybe this is like 6 hours. Well, we'll get into it. Maybe we should just get into that now, actually, because I will forget. Right, so we were told about that there was around that area ballpark of game here. Was that including? Was that like? Is there like in terms of? You think they meant in terms of content in the game or like Critical Path? Because Critical Path, you said it was about 2 hours.
2.5, and I did a lot. I did majority of the side stuff too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, then yes, let's get into it. So we're here talking about Falcon Age. If you're not familiar with the game, listener, it is a both traditional and VR game where you play as a woman who has a falcon who is breaking out, right? I believe out of the sort of like detention center put together by this organization who is colonizing this planet.
Yeah.
And it is a game about sort of fighting back at the colonizers. And we will get into that. But obviously, I think the big thing, and it's also worth noting that Quinn did not play the VR version of the game. Just this standard version. So I think we both played the VR version though at PAX though, right?
I did not. Fun fact, with my glasses, I can't do VR.
Okay, so I was the only one who played that, so I could speak a little bit to it then, and I may have some questions myself. But yeah, let's get started. So let's start from the surface. Like I said, listen, if you're not familiar with this, this is a game about building a bond with a bird. And you go on sort of an action-adventure first-person game. But on the surface, it is the sort of bird game. And I said this to Eka, like you get in people with the sort of, oh, hey, look at the fun bird, you can decorate it. Yeah. So let's talk about that falcon. Can you tell me about how cute that falcon is and how what good times and adventures you can get up to with that falcon?
So I love the Falcon and Falcon Age. Like, big shocker. When I booked my appointment for Falcon Age, and then I saw Eka, and he basically said, hey, do you want to play this demo with the cute-ass bird? I was like, yes. Like, I had a big grin on my face. I was very eager, and, like, it was something that he was, like, pushing. Like, he's the studio director, and she also runs the social for Outer Loop Games. And that's basically what he was pushing, was like, hey, look at this bird. It's cute. It's adorable. But then you come in and it's like this really good story about colonialism and culture and identity. And the Falcon actually ties into Ara's culture, which is something that's very interesting. The Falcon is being used in ways for combat, exploratory words escaping me, purposes, as well as that's it. Actually, it's just exploration and combat.
All right, gotcha.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why that dragged on so long, but But from one of those two, like the combat in particular, it's not good, is what I'll say.
Okay, so yeah, you're getting ahead of there a little bit, but
Yeah.
let's talk about that Falcon a little bit more because a thing of the game is that you can buy upgrades for your Falcon. Like you can get like little, you can dress up the bird. The bird will also grow up with you again to sort of focus on that bond aspect. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So when you first boot up the game and you're locked in this detention center, you go through a series of events. Then maybe within the first like 15 minutes, there is a falcon, like a mother falcon attacking a robot which is hurting her chick. The mother falcon dies, and then you pick up the baby falcon chick and basically nurture her back to health. And you nurture her, and you build a bond by escaping this prison. And that's where that like bond really starts, is you both have a vested interest in like helping each other out. And that's something which I really love about this bond that you have.
Right. And I think that bond is, VR, from playing the VR version, it certainly adds another layer to it. Because when your Falcon gets hurt, you have to like pluck the little like, I guess they're like bullets, arrows, sort of dealies. Like you sort of have to heal. Yeah, you have to heal the bird. It's very, very good. And I think like when you first play it, these sort of like little like chicken head lock thing may throw you off, but once you do more research, it's not too dissimilar from actual Falcons. But yeah, it's really interesting. And like I said, if you folks want to listen to Eka talk about how they got that experience down, how they like sort of accurately replicated how a bird and behaves with a person, you can listen to my interview with them. But yeah, of course, but we talked about, obviously there's more to this game than being a Falcon simulator. It is an action game, and there is very much a story. So let's start by talking about that story, and I think then we'll get into how it actually, how it is executed through gameplay. But yeah, tell me about what this game is about, Quinn.
So, the premise, the elevator pitch of Falcon Age is: what if the English empire, how they were colonizing, became automated with robots? That's the pitch of Falcon Age. You play as Aura, who is a young woman on a planet in the Port Loop region, and she is the daughter of was the daughter of a freedom fighter. Through the series of events, you find out that your auntie has been rebelling against these colonizers for 2 generations, and that is what is causing this region to fall into chaos. Is people have begun to give up. They have begun to succumb to the effects of the colonizers and just give in because they don't have the fight in them anymore. And that's a bad thing. It's complicated. And the way that Falcon Age really tells this story about colonizers is showing the actual effects of what they're doing. And that's not something which we see often in games. And that's one of the reasons which made this tale stand out to me.
Right. Like I said, it's a sort of like the opposite Far Cry. I think it's sort of I think the trope you would call it is the stranger in a strange land.
Yep.
It's very much like, instead of going into the outpost to sort of take out all the crazy drug raged out local residents, you're coming out to take out these robotic colonizers.
Yeah. And I think of like Mass Effect is like the easy example for me, is because that is literally a stranger in a strange land. And it's fascinating how Outer Loop games have turned this trope on its head and told us a very compelling and unique story about the effects of colonialism, how colonialism affects culture, and how colonialism affects identity. Because in the opening moments of the game, when you're talking to your auntie, there's a quick dialogue, and your auntie says, "Oh, you're using your colonizer name. Like, it's just this shortened version of like your real name, your real long name." And that's why I feel bad about calling Ara, because that's her quote unquote colonizer name, but I forgot her full long name.
Gotcha. They gotcha.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like I said, I think that was definitely the surprise at PAX when we got the demo. That it is such a story rich and character rich game. But not only that, but it's also still, as Eka said, a game-ass game. So there is combat in this game. It's very multifaceted too, which was also surprising. And it sounds like, I kind of got a little bit of this in the demo, but I was also like, it's also like a PAX demo, and I'm in a hotel room, and like I have VR, so not the best first impression. Like, it was fun, but I was also hitting like the TV. I could feel my little Move controller hitting the TV sometimes. Like, it is what it is. But it sounds like even without VR, even just as the game as a final product, it's complicated. It's maybe a little bit messy. So can you tell me a little bit about the actual gameplay of the game and maybe the gameplay loop?
Yeah. So there are like two core gameplay loops: is sending your Falcon to retrieve something, then you holding your hand out and the Falcon dropping it in your hand. And that's kind of like the exploratory and like quote unquote adventuring gameplay loop. Then there's the combat loop, which I don't like. And it detracts from the experience, of which you have to send your bird up. You have to whip on a robot, then the bird comes back down and drags him up in the air. Then you hit him 4 times, and it just like, it doesn't feel good. And it's repetitive and it's somewhat annoying, and it's such like, it's just like, oh, I have to do this thing now, instead of like making it fun. Because I enjoyed sending my Falcon up and grabbing something that I couldn't and catching it in my hand. I enjoyed that loop more. But the combat is lackluster and it's kind of disappointing. However, there is a different mode called Imprint mode, which I did not play. And from what I understand, it basically takes out all that combat elements. And it's just like it's just the exploratory elements, which I would tell the listener, to play that instead of the normal mode, because the combat's
right. Even though you yourself haven't played it yet, but I get it.
Yeah, because that's what I was told. Specifically during my demo is, Eka said something along the lines of, "We had so much fun with QA, like playing this exploratory gameplay loop, that we just wanted that instead of having the combat in there as well."
Interesting, because I think the combat makes a lot. I don't know how they translated it into non-VR. It made a little bit more sense in VR, like the little whip. It's a little bit cooler in VR, but I'm interested to. It's also only on PlayStation, so I would also imagine that would have been better on something like a PC VR, but it's only on PlayStation, so that's interesting. And yeah, you talked about that little whip, because you have the Falcon, who you can tell them like to target and to attack things.
Yeah.
And you also have sort of like I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like a sort of baton whip, like an electric baton whip that you can you use it to like open gates and such. Like, it's almost like a key as well. And like I mentioned, in sort of a Far Cry way, you were going to like these little at least from the demo I played, I went to an outpost, and I like got rid of the robots there. And in VR, it gets very hectic when you have so many enemies, and it's very process. There's certainly a process to combat, right?
Yeah,
like
there is.
Like you have to like use the baton a little bit, use your Falcon a little bit. Oh, the Falcon is hurt. You gotta heal the Falcon. Take
care of her. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, and that's like part of my like why I didn't like. It's fine when you play the demo, but when you have to take down like 3 refineries and go through like an extra stage using that combat. It's just like, okay, I have to single out this guy, do this exact thing on him, and it's repetitive in like the worst sense. Because there are some gameplay loops where it's you repeat something and it's kind of rewarding, fulfilling. But in Falcon Age, it's okay, I do this, I drag him off to the side, I single him out, then I do this one set of moves to take him out. And it's just like, it's very much following steps 1 through 5, and there's not a lot of like wiggle room there. So,
can you tell me a little bit about the structure of the world? Because is it like an open space, or is it fragmented into like levels?
So, okay, this is where it gets kind of tricky. So, the Port Loop region is a giant space. You have, when you first start, you start on your auntie's base camp. Then you have basically access to more or less the whole world, except for certain areas, like that final stage I was talking about, but we won't talk about for spoilers. So you can go wherever you want, but the moment you start following the main storyline, the main story beats, more things start opening up, and you're able to do more with the world. For example, the moment you take down the first refinery, you are able to start farming, and that whole thing opens up, and you can start doing it at that refinery and at the town, which is a safe space. Then it's basically every time you complete something, you unlock like a so-called ability, which really isn't an ability, it's just another thing to do in the world. And that's part of the fun of it, is you have this giant open space and you get to find, what can I do with what I'm given? So it's kind of like, it's a sandbox, so to speak, and the tools you get as you go along, and you can only use the tools in certain spots.
That's interesting. Okay, I think that sounds interesting. That's cool. So, we've talked about the story, we've talked about the gameplay. It feels like from how, and you're not the only one. I also think, obviously this is your review, but I've also seen folks like Natalie from Waypoint also talk about that the story and the characters and the art and the Falcon itself is very interesting, and it's really well done, but it seems like there is something missing from the game, and then perhaps it's from the gameplay department, something like it's sort of untapped.
Yeah. So one of my biggest gripes with Falcon Age, and like as much as I absolutely adore this game, is it has a lot of like untapped potential, I feel like, because it builds this fantastic world, it builds these cool characters that reside in it, and it tells such a unique and fascinating story, but it doesn't do much with those characters, and it doesn't do much with that world beside go from place A to place B to place C, etc., etc. And it's, at times the experience feels bare bones, and it's something which, like, the story is so rich and so interesting, then you transition to something which is just like just not to something where there's not much there. And it's like you go from a high plateau to really deep valley, then to a high plateau again, and it's like just it's peaks and valleys the entire time. And it's not something which stays constant. And it's something which kind of diminished my time when I was playing Falcon Age.
Gotcha. Well, I don't know how much more there is to say about Falcon Age. I think what we got here is a game that clearly has so much heart, and so not only it doesn't just have good intentions, it delivers on those good intentions, and it's very specific, it is very articulate, and it's very intelligent. And it tells a great story with great characters of color. It is a story of people of color, people who are marginalized. And they sort of, it's, again, I wasn't with Echo when he told you about the imprint mode and how they sort of found out, like, actually this is kind of a little bit better. But it maybe feels, again, not being a developer, it maybe felt like that imprint mode makes a bit more sense for this game. But at the same time, I was very impressed that they, like they said, they made a game-ass game, but that a lot of that game stuff could be a bit better.
Yeah. And that's like that's the hard balance with Falcon Age, is like, do we, in this review discussion, do we just focus on the great story and the themes it presents and not really talk about the combat, or how do we strike that balance? So it's hard. I just want it, like, Falcon Age is complicated. Is the easiest way to say it.
Gotcha. Well, I don't know if there's anything else to say about Falcon Age. I think we've sort of, gave our final thoughts, but is there anything left to say about Falcon Age, Quinn? And I guess a score as well, since this is still a review. Yeah.
So, like I said, I adore the story of Falcon Age. It's something which is going against trends in this industry, going against tropes that have been laid out throughout time. And it's a game with so much heart and so much character that sometimes fails, in like the smallest of times, and like in the moment it fails, and that's kind of disappointing. I am extremely eager to see what Outer Loop does next, because this game, the story has me hooked, and I'm invested because I know how much joy and how I know how big this game's impact is going to be, and I'm excited to see how it resonates with people more.
Right. And I think, well, I don't think we can say that. I think a big thing with that is that, and I think I could see a little bit, a challenge for Outer Loop is that the game sort of got put as a VR game only, when really it's not just exclusive to VR. And I hope it seems like Falcon Age is doing well. It's certainly getting a lot of support from press and from content creators and from even publishers like Sony. Like it was at their, I believe it was at that State of Play presentation.
It was at the first.
It's also like the banner for their Twitter. So that says something about the confidence and that people want to see this game be played. Just because it's a little rough doesn't mean, like, again, I don't think it's crazy for any of us, and especially if you're Irrational Passions, I would hope that it's good for a game to just be in the middle and it still be worth your time. It's only $20, I believe, right, Quinn?
Yeah, and it's $20, and like I said earlier, it took me 2.5-3 hours, and I think it is worth people's time, honestly.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's did you give it a score already, Quinn?
No, I did not.
Okay, did I surprise you with that one a little bit?
Kind of, because I personally don't like scores. No, I would give this game a 7.5 out of 10.
I think that makes sense. So yeah, Quinn, I guess thank you so much for sitting down with me to talk about Falcon Age. I'm excited to play it once I have time, and I think even just for, if you are here just for the bird novelty, it does that very well. If you're just here for that, there's certainly a lot of hats, and you can turn into a dog. I've seen
you can turn into a cat, a dragon, and there's a bunch of other things you can put on them. You can make him the baby burb. It can be a grown burb, however.
Right. Like, you can turn into a baby bird again once it grows up, so that's really cool.
My heart beats still. I love the baby bird so much.
Right. And apparently there's no importance on the bird's name. We didn't talk about that, but that's the thing that bummed you out, it seems.
Yeah, and I think, to go back to Natalie Watson's review on Waypoint, she mentions it too. Because your auntie makes, like, a big deal out of you naming this bird, then you never say her name again, so.
Yeah. Okay, Well, listeners, that is our review for Falcon Age. If you want more context for what Falcon Age is, we also have, of course, we have the preview, our original preview that Quentin wrote up for the site, and we also have an interview with Eka that is on this feed. It is the PAX East 2019 Falcon Age interview. It'll be pretty easy to spot. But yeah, that's all we got. Until the next review discussion, Quinn, once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
or
George.
joining me, I guess. And we will see all of y'all next time.